Diffracted lenses. All right.
Diffracted. That don't shine. I need some of that cool sniper shit stuff.
It's not. I don't think it's the glasses that shine. I think it's your forehead. Anyway,
Okay.
welcome, boys and girls, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. And here I thought we would have nothing to talk about, and then a time bomb goes off at about what 3:30 today, 3:30 Central Time
yeah,
today.
right about there something.
Yeah, with Mark Ingram, which that's why I'm wearing the jersey. Mark Ingram and of course Kobe Fleener got released today, this week, yesterday, and we were going to go over some of the cap implications behind that. And then of course we have rookie minicamp starting this weekend. Now that Jazz Fest is out the way, Sean Payton can focus on football again. Anyway, welcome, boys and girls, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, with my co-host here, Sean Williams, who's complaining about the shiny reflection off his glasses. Mr. Shiny Happy People, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome, dude. How are you? Everything's going swimmingly in Nila, not NOLA, but Nila. First, let me pay the bills. We want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. Y'all got to bear with me. My camera is just all asinine. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us tonight on Under the Dome. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you choosing us for your New Orleans Saints information and so on and so forth. We invite you to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and on iTunes, and come on over on Facebook and join us at Under the Dome Podcast. And with that, I want to introduce a very special guest. That is the man behind a new site that you guys all need to go and check out. It's called Saints Underground. He's someone that I've known for a few years now, and I got to tell you that these guys like Brandon are some of the guys that I respect the very utmost, because Brandon is a veteran. He former United States Marine Corps sniper, and he provides the very freedom that we have to do this show and to watch football, and everything that we do is under the blanket of freedom that these guys provide. So he's been in law enforcement. He was a private security contractor in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's former writer for Canal Street Chronicles, and not too long ago, he started up his own thing with Saints Underground. You guys, please welcome to the show, Brandon Varnum. Brandon, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. How are y'all?
Doing great, man. I hope I didn't botch that intro too bad.
No, you did a good job. You actually said my last name correct, too, which is rare.
I practiced all afternoon.
I didn't have to say it. That's why I came out right.
Yeah, Alan has issues with name pronunciation. We try to get him off the hook as much as we can with that.
Yeah, that's how it works. So, Brandon, tell us a little bit about Saints Underground. What exactly is this site, and what do you guys specialize in? What do y'all do?
Well, it's a new blog. I started it completely on my own. Like you said, I used to write for Canal Street Chronicles, and I love those guys. That was a really good group of guys over there. And I'm thankful for the opportunity that John Hendricks gave me. But I kind of put it on pause for a little while. I was dealing with a back injury, and because of the injury, I had the first chance to really spend a significant amount of time home for the first time in a couple of years, really. So I wanted to spend more time with the family, the stuff that I've missed out on for a long time. And I took a step back from writing. And when I decided to get back into it, rather than go write for somebody else, I just figured, why not try my own thing? See how it goes. So
Okay.
it's a hobby. I don't plan on making any money off of it. If it turns into something more, that's great. But for right now, it's just a hobby. It's the new Saints blog, and as far as what we cover, I try not to focus too much on one thing. I'm not a real big film analysis guy. Not that I have any issues with it. I love film analysis. I just don't have much experience with it. I did my first two film studies this past week, but I try to kind of mix things up, whether it's film study or an inspirational story. I wrote something on Marcus Colston. I also wrote another thing on the New Orleans Saints, basically international fan base. I tried to get the overseas Saints fans involved in things, and I just try to keep a variety of it. That way, I can try to reach the biggest group of Saints fans that I can.
Okay. What I guess what since you really don't have a focus, what is kind of your inspiration behind whatever you write? Do you just decide and say, hey, like today is, I believe it's 34 years since Jim Finks passed away. Do you think, say, hey, I should write something about Jim Finks because it's his anniversary of his death and so forth? Is that something that kind of drives you, or do you kind of just think as things come to you and say, you know what, I kind of want to talk about this right now? Where do you get your inspiration from?
A little bit of both. I mean, obviously, the anniversary of any significant event in Saints history would prompt me to want to write something. Other times, it's just a random idea of a certain topic, and I'll just kind of make a note in my cell phone while I'm out on the road, and when I get to the house, I'll try to focus on that. Also, times, I mean, you run across another article from another writer, whether it be ESPN or NFL, and sometimes you see something in there, and just part of it kind of grabs your attention. And obviously, you're not writing the same article they wrote, but you're just taking something from it and then focusing on that. I did something like that with Marcus Davenport the other day, where he was ranked, I believe, 38th. They had him ranked to be the 38th overall rookie this season, and I did something on that. So just a little bit of everything. Me being the only contributor. Well, actually, let me take that back. I was the only one until earlier today. I got a new guy that's writing for me now. He put out one article today, but before today, I was the only one writing. So I needed to draw these ideas from as many resources as I could.
I misspoke. I said 34. I meant to say 24 years. 24 years. May 8th, 1994. Not.
I was sitting here doing that math, going.
No, I misspoke. I'm sorry. I meant to say 24, and it just came out 34. I knew his last draft was, of course, when he drafted William Roaf, but he passed away a year after that. He wasn't even really involved with the Saints in 1993 because he was in such terrible shape. Lung cancer got him. So let's talk then about what happened today with Mark Ingram. It was announced that he is going to serve a 4-week suspension for testing positive for PED. Now, a positive test can mean one or two things. He either failed the test, or he didn't take a test, or he did take the test and that kind of is a catch-all for everything. I've seen everything on rumors. Everything on Twitter and social media. Rumors from, okay, well, must have got caught with weed, to steroids, to PED, Adderall, to, who knows what. Even Deuce McAllister tweeted that he had been taking a product, for 6 years, and then in 2008, he got flagged for taking Star Caps, if you guys remember that or not. Him, Will Smith, an offensive lineman. I just forgot his name. It's not Wally Williams. It was. It'll come back to me. And Charles Grant. There were four players. It was in 2008. They tested positive for star caps, and Deuce McAllister stated that it was a product he had been taking for 6 years. They changed a single ingredient in it, and suddenly he tested positive for that drug. So, how do you guys look at what happened to Mark Ingram and the immediate fallout? Where do the Saints go from here?
Brandon?
Well, yeah, let me kind of go back to what you were saying about the other ways that you can get this test result. I mean, you can put GNC and take a few different supplements, and when you combine them together, they can easily give a false positive. And Ingram, not saying that he wouldn't do it, but he just doesn't come off like one of the players to me who's going to be taking some type of performance enhancing drug that he shouldn't be taking.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
But I also, like I mentioned earlier, that running back that we just drafted is looking like a real good pickup now.
Well, I made a comment on Twitter. The only sad part about this is now we're going to get the groove land of a graveyard, groove land of old forgotten favorite running backs. Now everybody's going to want to sign, DeMarco Murray. I think I saw Eddie Lacy, Shane Vereen. They just go through the list of, Tim Hightower. Somebody will say, can you bring back Pierre Thomas? They'll just go down the whole list of running backs. And one of the things you have to keep in mind, if the Saints were to sign a running back now and he plays in that first game of the regular season, that running back contract is now good for the entire year. If he misses that first game, then the player only gets paid for whatever games he plays. So you could bring him in for weeks 2, 3, and 4, and then when Ingram comes back, you can cut him, deactivate him, whatever you need to do. You only have to pay him for those games. So that is something we have to take in consideration for the immediate fallout. Sean, how do you see it?
I'm going to make somewhat of a broad statement, and I was discussing this earlier today with someone else. I think that this is just the latest in a long line, not only New Orleans Saints, but league-wide. Each team needs to have, I don't know, maybe for lack of a better way of putting it, they need a compliance officer for the guidelines and the boundaries that are set up for the league, or excuse me, the boundaries that are set up by the league for these substances. There should be a person on every team, like I say, for lack of something better to call him, a compliance officer. If you play for this organization, you expect us to pay you. You take absolutely no supplement, no drug, no pill, no nothing without it coming through this office. And if you're caught doing so, you're gone. And there's so much gray area involving this because there's such a fine line that, according to what a lot of players have said over the years, there is a fine line that moves quite a bit. It's what's legal, what's not legal, what they allow, what they don't allow in this league. And do I believe that Mark Ingram took steroids, as someone I've seen someone say? No, I don't believe that. I believe that Mark Ingram, like every other player in the National Football League, was probably pursuing supplements that he considered to be well within the guidelines established by the league as to what was legal and what was allowable. And unfortunately, an oversight caught him. There's nothing at all whatsoever anywhere that makes me think that is out in the park at 2 o'clock in the morning scoring a bag of weed to puff pass behind the oak tree. There, I just can't see that for Ingram. Ingram's fought too hard, and with this organization has accomplished too much. I don't believe that he's by any stretch of the imagination a dirty player. But like I said, I believe that this screams out that there needs to be more done to protect these players from this exact sort of scenario.
Oh, I think Brandon hit it right on the head a while back earlier when he said that it was probably a combination of substances he had been taking that flagged a false positive on this test. But regardless, because of the CBA, the policies are pretty strict, pretty consistent. I just had it up a second ago. I'm sorry. If you, here we go. If you test positive, and this is a positive test, stimulant or anabolic agent, it's an automatic suspension of 4 games. First violation. Second violation, 10 games. Third violation, 2 years. So clearly it was a positive test he had flagged. A stimulant or I cannot say the word today, anabolic agent. Sorry, it's been a long day. Yes.
You remember my daughter?
Yes.
My daughter
it's been a
plus
long day.
bolic.
Yes. So clearly it was probably some kind of, like you said, from GNC or not GMC, GNC, where he had taken some supplement he's probably been taking for years, and it flagged a false positive test. And because the policy is strict, you get a 4-game suspension. Brandon, do you agree with that, or do you see it another way?
I agree with it. Because it's too difficult for them to know exactly what he took. Ultimately, and I dealt with the same exact rules basically in the jobs that I had, specifically the security contracting work. We got paid a lot of money, and we were fully responsible for what we put in our bodies, even if it was legal. They made sure that we were aware of the risk, and that if we end up coming up with a false positive, you are terminated. You lose your job. So ultimately, it's really to do your own research into what you're taking. Now, I don't like we already discussed. I don't think that he took anything he really shouldn't have been taking, and it sucks that he's going to have to deal with this. That the team's going to have to deal with this, but it does ultimately come down to he needs to be more aware of what he's taking.
Exactly. So, how do you guys see? We've talked a little bit about where to go from here, but how do you guys see the running back situation now? We've talked a little bit off the air about Scott, but we also have Edmonds and Jonathan Williams, the running back that we picked up off of waivers last year. He was inactive the entire season. So how do you see, I guess, where they're going to try and replace Ingram with these combination of backs? How do you think they fit in? Brandon, go ahead.
I'm not really sure about Edmonds or the other one that was inactive last year.
Jonathan Williams.
Right. I'm not too sure about him. Edmonds looked okay, and especially in that Bills game. All the running backs were looking good in the Bills game.
Yeah, absolutely.
The water boy ran out there and grabbed the tee, and he looked like he broke 3 tackles doing it.
But I think we'll see Alvin Kamara doing the same things he was doing last year, but just more of it in those first couple games. And then maybe have Boston Scott kind of taking the carries that Kamara was getting last year. He seems versatile, and neither one of them are a Mark Ingram type of running back. They're both really versatile. Ingram's versatile, but obviously he's a different type of running back than Kamara. I think they'll end up being the 1-2 punch until Ingram comes back. And if they need somebody to take the pressure off of them a little bit to give them a breather, then I don't know which one it'll be. Maybe Edmonds. And he's got a little playing time. He kind of proved himself a little bit last year.
Yeah, I think this training camp. Now, of course, the Saints knew about this even before the draft. They've known this was coming down the pike for a while. I think this preseason is going to be very important for Jonathan Williams, for Edmonds, and for Boston Scott, because they're going to want to see what do we have with these guys. I expect to see these guys getting a lot of carries. Kamara probably will hardly play at all. He probably might get one series in the first preseason game, maybe a couple plays in the second, and the third preseason game will probably be his most extended action. But I think you're going to see Williams and Edmonds start a lot with the first team. They want to see how these guys respond, because it's not just the inside power running that Ingram gave you. I think it's going to also be the blitz pickups, the pass blocking. Those are all things Ingram was very, very good at. That's very underrated by Saints fans who just look at him purely as a running back. I don't know how good of a blitz pickup and pass blocker Alvin Kamara is. And we certainly don't know what kind of pass blocker Williams, Edmonds, or Scott are going to be. Scott, especially because he's so small. That'd be really tough for a player like that. So you've got your first game against Tampa. The second one is Cleveland. Then you have Atlanta and what was it? Carolina, I believe. No, Giants. Giants are the fourth.
You
game.
got Tampa and Cleveland at home, and then you got to go to Atlanta and to the Giants.
Yes. And so you have two divisional games. Tampa at home is very winnable, even without Ingram. But Atlanta on the road, that's going to be a tough one. And even New York on the road, we don't know what kind of team this is going to be. So these are some very important games. Whereas in the beginning of the season, we may have been looking at 3-1, possibly even 4-0 at best. How do you think this is going to shape out, Sean?
It all depends, you know. I think the crux of the offense last season, obviously, it began with Kamara and Ingram. And I think to a certain extent they were looking to follow that recipe again this year. But I honestly feel like you're going to have more options and more reliable options, I'll put it that way, at wide receiver than you did a year ago.
I agree with that.
Everyone seemed to just assume that, and this went on almost the entire season, Willie Snead was just going to flip that switch at any point now, any minute now. You know, but my initial reaction to the news of Ingram today, the first thought that went through my mind was, how did that turn out for Willie Snead? Because if you'll remember, it was about a year ago that he got suspended for the first 4 games of the season. Never got out of the dog. I know it was a different situation.
Well, no, but it was also later in the season. It was later in the season. It was during preseason we found out.
Was it?
Yeah, it was that late. It was that late.
I thought it was about this time.
I'll double check. I'll double check right now, but it was about.
I very easily could be wrong about that.
Because people wonder.
It was the first 4 games that he served. I do remember that.
Yeah, it was, and September 12th. September 2nd, 2017, was when the news broke.
Wow.
Yeah, September 1st, September 2nd. So I thought it was right before, because people were wondering why he wasn't getting much playing time and why the Saints weren't offering him a contract other than having him sign his tender as a restricted free agent. And then the news broke that he was suspended for a DUI. So
that he had gotten a year prior.
Yes, he had gotten it earlier, and so they once again they knew that was coming.
Yeah. Uh, as far as how it's going to play out over the first 4 games of the season, obviously, being such an integral part of the offense, you have to address it in your game planning. Now, be that putting a player like a Boston Scott, an Edmonds, whoever, on the fast track, maybe stepping up the contribution of an Alvin Kamara, maybe compensating a little more with a passing game than you did a year ago to alleviate some of that pressure off of Kamara that he normally would have without Ingram being in there. Whatever you have to do, you're going to obviously you're not just going to next man up carry on the way you would possibly with other positions. But you know what, and I want to pose this. I know you asked both Brandon and I this. I want to pose this question, which may turn out to be the bigger thing that we're looking at when all this is said and done. What do you guys think that this is going to mean moving forward with Mark Ingram in a contract year? Because this is the last year he's under contract.
Yeah.
Is it not?
I believe it is. I believe this is a contract year.
How do you think this is going to affect him extending his career with the New Orleans Saints?
I don't think that it's going to make a difference. I mean, Mark's character, everyone knows what kind of player and what kind of guy he is. He's performed well. He's a leader on the field. I don't think this 4-game suspension is going to personally. It might make a difference in how much they pay him if he decides to extend because he's missed some playing time. But I don't think that it will change their decision on whether or not they decide to keep him.
I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that. I mean, he's going to be 29, 30 years old, in that range when they will be looking at signing for a new contract. That's about the age that running backs pretty much start breaking down. The good news for Ingram on his side is that he has been in a timeshare his entire career. He has less wear and tear on the tires than an average running back, say Adrian Peterson, for example.
He's riding on the rims these days.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what happened to Deuce. That's what happened to Dalton Hilliard. It happens to almost every running back that the Saints have ever had as a bell cow back. They just start accumulating the injuries and the breakdowns, and they lose a step, and next thing you know, they're just not as effective as they were earlier in their career. Mark Ingram's avoided major injury almost his entire career. He has been put on injury reserve, but it's not for knee injuries, shoulder injuries, elbow injuries, ankle, broken legs, that kind of stuff. It's not the stuff that really running back quickly. I agree totally with Brandon. The Saints know what kind of player Mark Ingram is. They know what kind of person Mark Ingram is. They probably look at this as an unusual circumstance, an unfortunate circumstance, probably because he took a combination of something he shouldn't have, and that's what flagged the test. Not that he is not that he's a Kenny Vaccaro, and I hate to throw Kenny Vaccaro out like that, but Kenny Vaccaro failed 2 tests. And if someone would have asked me why a player like Kenny Vaccaro hasn't been signed yet, I bet you that we will find out eventually that Kenny Vaccaro probably failed a 3rd test and is probably looking at a long suspension, a year-long suspension. So teams just like, well, what good is it to sign this guy? He's not going to play again. I'm not saying that's what's happened to him, but I am saying, given his track history that we have seen so far with him, as opposed to a Mark Ingram, that may be why Vaccaro hasn't been signed and why the Saints would want to sign a Mark Ingram. This is just a what if scenario. Not that I'm saying this is what's going on. I'm just saying they know what kind of person Mark Ingram is. They like the person that Mark Ingram is. Kenny Vaccaro, they were willing to let go because of various reasons. Sean, what about we released Coby Fleener yesterday? Not much of a surprise, except for someone like me who really thought that if you were going to release Fleener, you should have done it before the draft, before we paid that bonus. But it looks like now we paid the bonus. He was released with a failed physical designation. He's a post June 1st cut, so we're going to save $3.2 million this year, and I believe his contract carries over to next year in dead money. It's a little unclear. It's a little unclear right now because if he still signs with somebody, the language in the contract lessens his cap impact for the Saints. So I was looking all day today. I could not find the official cap numbers for releasing Fleener, but how do you take the release of Fleener, especially given that we did not draft a tight end?
I think that number one, first and foremost, much like what a lot of people are looking at the Boston of drafting Scott, the drafting of Boston Scott, it makes a lot more sense that you took a running back now that you know that Mark Ingram is going to be suspended for the first 4 games of the season. Well, bringing back Ben Watson, the old man, you knew that you were more than likely, barring some unforeseen thing playing out during the draft to where one of these guys basically fell to you that you really liked, you were pretty sure that you knew you were going to be without Fleener because you were going to cut him. I have mixed emotions about it. First and foremost, I have to fall on the side that it was the best thing for the team. We don't that emotional roller coaster of a game in the Superdome last year versus the Redskins. We don't win that game without Coby Fleener.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get past the emotion of that game and look at the whole breakdown of it, Coby Fleener in his 2 years in the Saints uniform averaged 2 catches a game.
Mm-hmm.
And while on one hand the Saints need more out of the tight end in their offense than that, the reality is starting to set in that this is going to be a different team moving forward. You're not going to have, in my opinion, now don't send me angry emails and threaten my children or anything like that. Moving forward, the tight end in this offense, unless something drastic happens, is going to be devalued. And by that I mean, you're not looking for the next Jimmy Graham. You're not looking for the next Ben Watson of 2 years ago. You don't need him. You have 2 running backs, either of which can get it done, much less having both available on any given Sunday. You have Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn Jr., what you hope to be a healthy Cam Meredith, the kid from Central Florida whose name escapes me. But, you're not going to expect Drew Brees to be that 5,000-yard passing quarterback anymore. Those days are gone. You're more oftentimes than not, you're looking for 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And that's what this offense is becoming. I honestly believe that. Drew Brees is about to become what is he, 39 and a half, 40 and a half?
He's about to turn 39, yeah.
You don't want to really chance that, I think. You're not going to ask any more out of him than you have to, because every pass he doesn't throw is a pass at the end of his career that he's going to be able to throw. And that may not make sense to a lot of people, but you want to extend the career of Drew Brees, and the only way that you're going to do that at this point is going to be taking less off of his plate now and adding it to the end of his career. And hopefully he's going to live long enough to fulfill that. What do you think, Brandon?
I agree with a lot of that. I mean, I don't think, possibly because of the weapons that they have picked up, the wide receivers, running backs, maybe tight end wasn't the priority that we all thought that it was going into the draft, because I don't think many of us expected that they would finish up the 2018 draft and not come out with a tight end. Obviously, they did sign some undrafted free agents that they've got coming out. There's also, I've got a list right here of current NFL tight ends who will be free agents next year. But Ben Watson, I mean, he's 37 years old, and he's obviously not our long-term tight end. He's not the guy who's going to man the position for the next 5 years, but he's easily an upgrade over what we had last year. Last year, Cleaner had 22 catches for 295 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hill had 16 catches for 125 yards and a touchdown. And I'm just going to call him Whom Man. Had 6 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Watson had 61 catches, 522 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's more than all 3 of those tight ends combined.
With Joe Flacco.
Right, with Joe Flacco. I didn't like when they let him leave, personally. I thought that he did
a good
job. And now I was excited when we signed Fleener. I expected a lot more out of him, but I really wanted us to keep Watson.
I did too.
Now, that being said, an undrafted free agent making the roster is generally a long shot. But with the tight ends that we have, I think one of these tight ends that we have, at least one of them, coming into the mini camp by the time we get to the regular season, I think one of them is going to be on the roster.
I agree with that. If you think, Alan, you'll have to correct me on this. Was it 2 or maybe 3 years ago? By 3, maybe 4 games into the season, we were down to bringing a tight end off the practice squad. Or no, it was when we got Who Man, I think. Josh Hill went down. I want to say by then Jimmy was gone. But anyway, my point is, tight end's a very physical position, and it's easy to go through an entire depth chart quickly. I see absolutely no reason why at least one of these undrafted free agents shouldn't make the team.
As great as the Saints' offense was last year, I think they're ranked top 3. Was it number 2 or something like that? They were ranked overall.
They were in the top 5. They were in the top 5. But
they had a glaring issue, and that was their third down conversion rate. It was the first time of the entire Breeze and Peyton era that they have not been in the top 10 of third down conversion rate. They were ranked 22nd last year. And we didn't know exactly how they were going to fix it. Obviously, they were going to address their third down issues. I think Watson's going to help with that, but I think it really comes down to those 2 wide receivers that we added. So I think they're going to kind of stick with what they got as far as tight ends go. Maybe one of those undrafted free agents makes the roster, but this year I think we've got what we got.
Yeah, here's my take, and I'm going to disagree a little bit with Sean here, because as you saw in the playoffs and you saw in the Washington game, and you had a couple other games, basically when they took away the run, teams kind of started to load up the box and said, you know what? If you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us with Drew Brees, which in years past, that's suicide. But teams now have felt that the running game is better than the passing game, given the weapons that the Saints had in the passing game. I think the foursome of Thomas, Meredith, Ginn, and Smith, Tre'Quan Smith, the Central Florida kid, is far superior to the foursome of Thomas, Ginn, Snead, and Coleman that we had last year.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's where the third down conversion rate improvement is going to come from. We talk a little bit about, how Watson outperformed all the tight ends on our roster last year. You also have to take into consideration who exactly did Baltimore have to throw to other than Watson. Right. I just saw they're going to not pick up the fifth-year option for Perryman, Brett Perryman's son.
Pre-shot.
That has to kind of be taken into consideration when it comes to that. That being said, I think I do agree that the emphasis on the tight ends being a big part of the passing game, as it was when we had Jimmy Graham there, as it was in 2015 when you had Ben Watson, Brandon Cooks, and not much else. You discovered Willie Snead that year, but you had not much else in the passing game. And the running game had not improved to the point that you had a two-headed threat like you have with Ingram and Kamara. I think Watson, he's going to have a down statistical year, but he's going to become more valuable to the Saints when he is called upon.
Right.
It won't be one of those like you have with Fleener, where Fleener's out there running a pattern. Is he going to get it? Is he not going to get it? I don't know. Whereas if Watson, the ball comes to him, you're pretty much sure he's going to catch it. And when he doesn't catch it, you're like, boy, what happened there? That's where I think Watson will be better at. I don't know if a rookie is going to make the team, just because I think that if a rookie makes the team, they're going to have to really impress. Again, that's what's going to make preseason interesting. They have to really impress not only in the passing game, but as a blocker in the running game. And my last thing with the passing game, unless of Drew Brees is better, that takes us back to the first point of what we started the show off with. Mark Ingram missing those first 4 games, you're probably going to get a lot more Drew Brees than you normally would in those first 4 games, especially when you play a team like Atlanta, where it's probably going to be a shootout between us and the Falcons. And even a team like Tampa Bay, you're probably going to see more of a shootout than you probably normally would have with a Mark Ingram on the field.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Am I selling Kamara? I'm sorry. I there was like
number 41. Yeah,
rookie of the year. Screen, and I was like, am I selling Kamara short in telling people that Alvin Kamara is not ready to be the feature back in this offense?
He's never had more than 12 carries in a game.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
I make bold statements, and Alan backs it up with facts.
Well, I mean, I just saw I just saw that recently. He's never had more than 12 carries in a game. That doesn't mean 12 touches. He's had lots of touches. They've used him a lot more in the passing game than the running game.
Yeah.
But he's never carried the ball for more than 12 times in a ball game. So that's a lot to put on him. He can do it, but how much wear and tear is that on a back like him? Because he's never been a full-time carry, a bell cow back even in college. He was a split carry back in Tennessee.
Yeah.
He came in with Alabama as a split carry back. You can probably get away with it for a game or so, I don't think I'd want to get away with it for 4 games. That's tough, especially in short
What do you
yardage.
think, Brandon?
I mean, maybe I'm being a little biased, but I don't think that he's going to be a 25 carry a game guy, but I think he can handle 15 to 20 a game. I think he'd be all right with that. He's not small. He looks like he is, but he's about 210 pounds, something like that.
Actually, I can't remember if it's plus or minus, but he's supposed to be like 15 pounds either heavier or lighter than Mark Ingram. I can't remember which.
Right. And
I want to say heavier.
That's a rookie. I mean, most of these guys, you'll see them coming to the second NFL season, and they usually put on a little bit of muscle because coming up to their rookie year, they're all training for the combine and their pro day, and they're not really putting on the size they want to put on. You see a lot of those guys come back a couple pounds heavier, and I'd expect him to at least have put on about 5 pounds or so. I think he could handle a heavier workload, but I wouldn't want to feed him 25 carries a game.
You're going to be shocked by this, but Ingram and Kamara are exactly the same height and weight. They're both 5'10", 215. But Ingram is built. Yes, Ingram's a lot stockier than Kamara is. Kamara is a lot leaner. So, and it could be just because of their running styles. You know, I don't know. They just look like 2 different backs. I agree with you, and they're the exact same size. Hey, while we were talking earlier, I just out of curiosity, I looked up Jonathan Williams, the running back that we picked up. He's from Arkansas. We picked him up off the Buffalo Bills, I think, practice squad. I'm not sure, or maybe Denver. We got him from. I know he was drafted. I don't think so, but he was drafted by the Bills in 2016. So this was a kid who they saw something in there. I think really fits well in this offense. I'll read some of his strengths here. Loose hips, quick feet are his calling card. Crafty with outstanding lateral movement to sidestep tacklers in the backfield. Hits the hole and gets into the second level quickly. Light feet allow for immediate actions, reactions when needed. Forced 44 missed tackles in 2014. Excellent instincts, great feel through the hole, maintaining distance from tacklers, and finds the best running lane possible most of the time. Limited treadwear with just 406 carries in Arkansas. Sets up his blocks well, runs with good balance through contact, and an ability to run through arm tackles. Played in the most physical running game and will finish runs stronger than most slashing backs. Dependable in short yardage with the fortitude for short yardage situations. A 3-down running back with soft hands out of the backfield, willing to do his part in pass protection. Sounds like a great guy. He was drafted in the 5th round or the 6th round. The negatives were needs to play with a consistent burst and decisiveness, spoiled between massive Arkansas offensive line that blew open, wide open, gaping lanes that he won't see in the pros. Against Georgia in 2014, made bad decisions to break inside runs outside because lanes were tighter than usual. At times, got too cute in the hole rather than planning and bursting upfield. Thin calves could use a little more thickness in the thighs. Missed the entire 2015 season after surgery to repair a foot injury in August. Must get better at protecting the football at the point of impact. Lost 5 fumbles in 2014. And they compare him to T.J. Yeldon, the old Alabama back. So I guess my point is, judging just reading his draft report, and take that for what it's worth, it sounds like it's going to be running back by committee again, much like how it was if you think about in 2011, where you had Ingram, Ivory, Thomas, and Sproles all in the backfield at one point or another. I think you're going to see the Saints try and do that same approach, with Ingram missing those first 4 games. So I'm kind of optimistic a lot more optimistic than I was when I first heard the news that while we'll miss the pass protection and while we'll miss the consistency of Ingram, I think the Saints will be creative enough. I agree with you guys. I think Kamara could probably handle some more carries, but I think you'll see some of these other guys come in and spell him and get a lot more touches than you would think. Even just 5 or 10 touches in a game, you'll probably see more.
Let me put it like this. I think the loss of Kamara last year, even though it was very brief, affected the team on the offense a lot more than the loss of Ingram will affect them. Now, I know we're going to feel the loss, but I think we felt it a lot more with Kamara not on the field. The difference is that this year we've improved our wide receiver group. We've also upgraded the tight end position.
Right.
And improved the defense as well.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with all this. Now, especially, going back to the third down issues we had last year. I think you're going to see the receivers pick up the slack on that a lot more. I think the size these guys are, they average anywhere from 6'2" to 6'4", not counting Brandon Coleman, who's the 6'6" guy. You're going to see a lot more physical, big men who can block out these cornerbacks more like a basketball player doing a post-up than you would with, the smaller Lance Moore, Brandon Cooks kind of guys that the Saints seem to be looking at earlier in their career, looking for small, fast guys. Y'all agree? Disagree?
No, I agree. Can y'all give me just a minute, though?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. The role of running back in this offense has never been traditional by any stretch of the imagination, and that goes back to if I'm Alan, you can correct me on this. The first running back that Sean Payton drafted, which was Reggie Bush.
Yeah, we went back to the future. In 2006, we basically had two running backs, Bush and Bush and Deuce McAllister. And then you had God, I just drew a blank on his name. I had him a second ago. God, and he lived next door to some friends of mine. I even met him a couple times.
Give me a number.
27 was his number. 27. 27.
Oh. Okay, give me a first name.
Hang on a second.
27.
Oh, God, I'm looking it up right now because why is David Copay always listed in the Saints roster? No matter what year I look it up. Okay, he was. Come on. Go back to
27
position. Aaron Stecker.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
He was a holdover from the Jim Haslett era. And, he came in and played. He was in 12 games, actually, but he played. Though I remember him most vividly from the playoff game in 2006 against the Eagles. You know that big hit on Reggie Bush? You remember that early in the game?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Stecker ran the clear-out pattern that was supposed to draw the cornerback away from Bush when he caught that little swing pass and opened the lane up so Bush was going to go. Well, if you watch, Stecker runs and the cornerback doesn't go with him. The cornerback is watching Reggie Bush the whole time. So as soon as Breeze turns to throw that little swing pattern, he is going on a beeline for Bush. And Bush catches it, turns around, and wham, he gets tagged. And Stecker is wide open. Stecker's not the primary back. So, but yeah, Aaron Stecker was his name.
We need to thank Brandon for joining us tonight. Brandon, tell everyone how they can follow you on social media and also follow your site as well.
Well, the website is NewOrleansSaintsUnderground.com. I've got two Twitter profiles. I've got my personal one. It's at Bravo Victor 03 on Twitter. And then the Saints Underground page is at NO, like New Orleans, Saints Media.
Very good. Very good. Brandon, thank you for taking the time to spend with us here. We really appreciate this. I'm excited.
I told you, man, we ain't lost a man yet. You did.
No.
It was fun. I definitely want to do it again. Also, before I get off, I've got two little promotions that I've got going on right now.
Knock it out.
Yeah, we're going to be giving away an Alvin Kamara jersey. The winner will be selected on August 1st. The tweet is pinned to my Saints Underground Twitter page. All you have to do is follow us and retweet the post, and you're automatically entered into the drawing. We recently did one with a walk-ons gift card, so it's not a scam. There was a winner. He did get the gift card. We're not just trying to get followers. And then the other, we decided to go ahead and I'm gonna create a fantasy football league. It'll be an ESPN league, but I'm just trying to get the fans involved. I like the fan interaction. That's probably one of my favorite parts about doing this whole thing. So I'm gonna put a little league together and have a few people play a fantasy league with us.
I'm retired from fantasy football, but my son will be glad to play.
We invite everyone to follow Saints Underground, follow Brandon. He's a fantastic guy, and once again, much respect for our American veterans. Thank you for being with us, Brandon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank y'all.
As I gag and choke on my own swallow there. Okay.
Oh.
So last week, we're at 9:03 already. I can't believe. Last week we talked a little bit about some of those undrafted free agents, and clearly, tight end now is the big focus. Running back, the guys that we have on the roster, how they're going to play out. We talked a little bit about Baron Scott.
Boston
Scott. Baron is somebody.
Just remember, Boston Strong.
Yes. You see, I know these names. I just don't have them in front of me to remind me who they are. But what about some of these other guys they brought in? There was a receiver. First off, there's a tight end that's like 6'9". I don't even know who this guy. What this guy's name is? Who is this guy? Do you know?
You got a name for me?
Well, that's what I was going.
Or that's what you were asking me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
I'm the social media monitor, man. Give me a minute. Let me pull up the UDFAs.
Hang on, I got it here.
What day was the draft?
It was.
This is what happens when you make notes for the show.
Right. Okay. All right. So you've got Dion Yelder, Dion Yelder from Western Kentucky. They talked about Colton Jumper, the linebacker in Tennessee. I just don't know who the 6'9" tight end is.
Okay. This has been a few days ago, but I got Yelder from Western Kentucky. I've actually seen that kid play because they're in the same league as Tech is, and he's all that. He's every bit pro ready. Great hands, great instincts, and if I remember correctly, on the very seldom off chance that he was asked to block rather than run a pass route, he did very well. But he's really about the only tight end as far as the UDFAs that I have firsthand knowledge of.
I'm looking for this guy's name because I've seen people talk about him. This is terrible. You have the Wake Forest tight end Cameron Seringne, Seringne.
I would say Saran.
Yeah, that's actually he's a pretty accomplished pass catching tight end. So that's the other kid that a lot of people watching to see what he does. Um, you have the big receiver that came through. Of course, JT Barrett, who we talked about last week.
Yeah.
I'm going to find out who the hell this 6'9" tight end is.
Yeah, I remember seeing something about that. I just could not get a name with it.
Nate, here he is. Nate Wozniak, Wozniak. 6'9" tight end. He is from Minnesota, the University of Minnesota. Let's see. All right, now I'm going to Google this dude's name. I like this. We are just doing this live on the air.
Preparation is so overrated.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Bear with us, guys. We do this all
you know, I've got so many things going on at the same time as we're doing this that I'm lucky I got anything. Okay.
I keep going back to the very same thing that I started with, and it's always the picture that I posted on Facebook about when your co-host is badass enough to have a town named after him.
Oh, you know, and this is how,
and just for the record, I looked at the whole thing for the state of Louisiana, and there is no Sean, Louisiana, so I'm deeply hurt.
No.
And I've checked 3 other states, and there's no Sean in any of them either. I quit.
There is a Williamsburg though. Feel good about that. There is no written profile on this kid at all. Not anything that's worth, other than his stats. And they've got video footage. I don't need to see that. But there is nothing written about this guy.
You talking about the kid from Minnesota?
Yeah, Minnesota. I'm going site by site, and it's very generic information.
Well, immediately right off the bat, everybody's going to look at that 6'9" frame and say, "Oh, we got another Jimmy Graham."
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's okay. This is pretty much the kind of information I'm finding. Wozniak completed his 4-year career for the Gophers as follows: an anchor on the end of the Minnesota offensive line. Wozniak was a dependable blocker for the Gophers with the occasional flash of pass-catching ability. In 34 games for the Gophers over 4 seasons, Wozy, they called him, caught 28 passes for 314 yards and never got in the end zone. So, okay. The good thing is, if he's a dependable blocker at 6'9", that means he's got enough leg and knee bend and waist bend to get underneath a blocker, underneath a rusher, I should say, and stand him up and be a good blocker. Yeah, that's pretty raw, So if he makes the team, then it's going to be a case of he's a project. He is a project
at best.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't even look up a draft profile on the guy,
I really can't. Not anything useful.
That's going to be a reach, no matter how you define
Well, it's why he went undrafted, and that just tells me that. Yeah, he's a project. He's just somebody that's going to. We'll have to see what he does. Anyway, okay.
Next week we're going to, barring Mark Ingram making a dramatic and rapid comeback from the suspended list. we're going to start probably analyzing our schedule, which with the pre-draft show and the draft and the undrafted free agents and one thing and another, we never have actually addressed the fact that the schedule for the new season came out, and we didn't even talk about it. We're going to begin looking at that, and we're working on bringing you some really neat and shiny toys over the hot summer months. Hopefully we'll have some surprises for you guys soon.
Yeah. Listen, and the reason why I'm not really focusing a whole lot on the undrafted free agents is because we've reached a point in the roster. We've reached a point with this Saints team where we do have holes. Every team does. But we're at the point now where outside of the draft, it's going to be hard for an undrafted free agent to really make this roster and have a significant impact. I'm not saying it's not going to happen.
It really is. Because, I mean, when you're a 7-9 team, the chances of being a UDFA and cracking the active roster are much greater than being a divisional round playoff team looking to take a divisional round playoff team that was like one pass. Oh, I hate to say this.
Yeah,
one pass away from the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, the third one, the third NFC Championship game. Yep.
Yeah,
but
the bar has been raised, and I don't mean to discount any of these guys or speak ill or negatively of their talent, because that's not the business that I'm in. I have nothing but the utmost respect for these guys and their abilities and all that, but I mean, you have to look at it professionally. The bar has been raised. You're not out there competing against scrubs for positions. You're out there now competing with offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year. Now, that's not to say that these guys won't make the team, but I'm just saying that the level that you're going to have to bring your game to in training camp, in these mini camps such as we spoke of earlier, you're going to have to really bring it much more than you would have 12 months ago to crack this roster.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at, and this is the argument we have with some of the free agents that are still left out there, whether it's Dez Bryant or the defensive tackle from Indianapolis, or any of the players, even running backs out there right now. It's where do they fit in the roster, not as a starter, but as a situational player, a part-time player. That's where you are right now. Your starting roster is pretty much set with a few pieces maybe on the fringe as far as, let's say, linebackers. How do the linebackers shake out? Is there a battle really with Ken Crawley, or is the battle really for the nickel back? The offensive line. We're talking about guys for the future. We're not talking about guys that are coming in to start. We're looking for our sixth offensive lineman, not our starting offensive lineman. So that's kind of where this roster is. You're going to see a lot of what you saw last year out there with just a few new faces in a couple places, and that's about it. In this draft, I'd said day after the draft was over with, you got two starters. And the second starter is really a starter because all four receivers play all the positions. But Davenport is going to have to either be a starter or somebody who's heavily in the rotation. And Taquan Smith, the receiver from Central Florida, is going to have to be one of those top four receivers. After that, these guys are all developmental or guys that are going to try and fit in somewhere in situations. and special teams. So
You know,
where does that
took
leave
a
the
lot of
undrafted
grief.
kids?
I took a lot of grief this year when I said that this draft class wasn't as deep as a year ago, and by that I wasn't at all knocking your top one, maybe two people at each position, but after that there was a pretty steep drop off. And you think there's 32 teams, and each position you take the first and the second guy, the best and the second best at that position. Well, there is a pretty steep and significant drop from that to what the next the level of play for the next guy up. And you know, for some positions it may have been 3 to 4 deep. Some positions it may have been 1 deep. But I caught a lot of grief for saying that, but I still think that it's true, and it's exemplified. Outstandingly with the Saints draft. You have Davenport, who was graded out as a first-round player. You have Smith, which was, truth be told, probably a second to third round pick grade. And after that, as Alan said, everything that follows that is going to be a project at best.
Right. I mean, conceivably, last year every draft pick made the roster. 2 years ago, every draft pick made the roster. It's very realistic that a couple of these guys who got picked this weekend or last 2 weekends ago, I can't believe the draft's 2 weekends ago already, but guys who got picked 2 weekends ago, some of them aren't going to make the team. Some of them are going to go to the practice squad. Some may. It's hard to think about, when we've spent so much time and energy, and people talk about, for example, the 4th round pick that we went over with Barry. The guys that were on the roster, on the board when the Saints picked that offensive tackle from Florida State, and he may not even make the roster. Whereas if we would have taken a tight end in the 4th round, we might be talking about that guy being one of those 3 instead of worrying about whether a 6'9" or tight end from Minnesota can make the roster, or the kid from Wake Forest, or the kid from Western Kentucky. Whether one of those guys are going to end up being the 3rd or 4th tight end. So that's kind of where this team is now. You're finished the building process. Now you're talking about what do we need to do to take that next step. So we're not. This is what I've been looking for the whole time we were talking. So if I sounded, if I sounded like I was distracted, I was to an extent. Okay. The OTAs start later this month. There are going to be the week of May 22nd and 24th, May 29th through 31st, June 4th through 7th. The mandatory minicamp is what ends the OTAs. That's when the whole team will be together for the first time. I was looking, though, to find out the exact schedule of that's not what I wanted, of minicamp this weekend, and it does not say it anywhere. I know it's this weekend, though. It's not going to be open to the public. I'll tell you that much.
That means we'll have to make up our own narratives for it. Cool.
Well, the media will be allowed some access in the beginning. I think for the first things like that, and they'll get some footage of them running around and catching a couple balls and stuff in the very beginning. But they're not allowed to film anything. All it just says is the first rookie minicamp 2 weeks after the end of the draft on April 29th, which will be this week. but it does not. I can't believe I can't find a single thing that tells me when it starts and when it ends, how many days, and so forth. It's usually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They have one Friday afternoon, two on Saturday, one Sunday morning. That's how it is, and it's over with. It's not open to the public, but I'm sorry, guys. I tried finding the information. I just could not find it anywhere on that. So come next Tuesday, we'll talk a little bit about what the media had to say about the mini camps, who made it from the tryout people, because it's like 50 people show up to this thing, believe it or not. You've got all the rookies that come. You've got all the undrafted free agents that come. Then you've got like a handful of tryout people who come out to this. Like one of the guys they cut today is coming back for the tryout this weekend.
Yeah, Zaza or
yeah.
I can't.
I don't understand that. I don't even pretend to know what that means. It's just something they do. Because you can only have 90 players, not including the international player who doesn't count towards your roster. You can only have 90 players, so you actually can cut somebody, bring them back for the tryout, and if you like them better than the guy you kept, you can cut the other guy and bring them back, that kind of stuff. The life of an NFL rookie, that's how it goes. And then we'll also find out who gets to do the NFL Films Hard Knocks. I'm hoping they pick it. I'm hoping they pick Atlanta. I'd love for them to pick Atlanta again. The Saints are coming, and one of these days, the Saints will be on Hard Knocks. But anyway,
Sean Payton will hold that press conference and say, "Welcome, Hard Knocks. I quit."
Mm-hmm. Because you know how much he's going to hate that.
Oh man!
Anyway,
I can't imagine.
But I know the NFL is going to make every team do it. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. I hope you got something out of this episode tonight. Basically, it's a wait and see thing. It's shocking that we lost Mark Ingram. It's concerning we lost him, but life moves on. Don't expect to see somebody come in right away. The Saints have known about this for a while. I expect, like I said from the beginning of the show, I expect in-house players to kind of pick up the slack. At least they'll know this by preseason. We'll see a lot of these other running backs in preseason. And if they feel like after the Tampa game that what they have isn't good enough, then you'll probably see somebody brought in or somebody that's been sitting in camp and they got a feel for them and they'll bring them back after week one. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us again tonight. We hope to see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.